All right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to This Week Unloaded. This week so far, we have with us Mr. David Bowling, the Kingpin himself. How are you doing tonight, David?
I'm doing well. Thanks a lot. Appreciate you having me.
Yep, not a problem. We were talking a little bit before we went live, and David was telling me about his experience with his 357 that he did just buy. Why don't you tell the folks out there about your pistol, show them what you got, and tell them about the adventures you were having with it at the range.
Well, I got the 357 Taurus. It's the tracker, and it's actually pretty sweet. I trying to get my camera set up so I can make it easier for people to see. But surprisingly enough, sitting around in the room, just kind of playing with it, it uh it seemed like it was going to be hard to operate and have kind of a tough function with it. But once I put rounds in it, the first shot that I took was in single action, and it fired really, really smooth, and we actually hit pretty much dead center of the target with the first shot. You can see it's got, I don't know if that's going to show up or not. It's got a really bright front sight on it. And then the double action was considerably smoother than any revolver I've ever shot. And I got this, the case, and I think it was 12 boxes of ammo, all the stuff I put in the video about it for 350 bucks. So I got a super great deal. And this thing's really heavy just holding it, but when you actually fire it, the the ports in the front seem to work. And the manufacturer said that the grip style and the material that they used in here is all supposed to minimize the recoil. It's just as smooth as any striker fire pistol that I have. So I'm definitely pleased with it.
Yeah, that gas porting, I'm sure, reduces that muzzle slip hole, which is what the purpose is. You gas goes up there and it keeps your barrel down, so it helps reduce the felt recoil on it.
Yeah, and it's got, I don't know if I can get it on the camera right there. It's got four holes dug out or drilled out, I guess you would say, on each side.
Yeah, basically they bore it out like you would bore the cylinders on an engine block.
So I'd have to take their word for it because, the recoil is nothing. It was easy, like I said, just as easy as a striker fire pistol to stay on target after the first shot.
Right. Vanessa's asking what revolver is that?
It's the Taurus Tracker 357 Magnum, seven
And
rounds,
that's a
seven.
four. That's the 4 inch barrel, right?
Yeah, uh-huh. Yeah, I'll put it back up. There you go. The I've seen some of them like with the longer barrels that people have actually put scopes on. And with the shorter one, they say that if you take off the rear sight, you can mount a Picatinny rail right there and put like a red dot or something like that or a laser. I'm not going to do all that, but if you wanted to, you always could.
Right. Yeah, I can see that because that's like we were talking before. That's essentially the Taurus copy of the Smith and Wesson 686. So, and pretty much what you can do with one of those, you can do there too.
And it's real simple to clean. You pop open a cylinder and you don't have to take it all the way apart or anything.
Yeah, those are. Excuse me. Yeah, the Taurus revolvers. I mean, that they you can get a nice deal on those. They're not entirely terrible revolvers. So,
I think the size of it is pretty good for me. I would consider it kind of a medium because you've got the longer barrels, which that's just too much gun. Obviously I'd buy one because I like it and just keep it in my collection, but I wouldn't grab it if I was looking to defend myself or definitely not carry it with me. And
right.
then the snub noses. are the same thing. I think they're cool looking. I'd own one, but I wouldn't. I doubt I'd call it my favorite.
Right, right. Calaveras, I sent you a link. If you want to jump in here, you can. I mean, the guys that are right there at Tulsa, so are going to be missing from the show. So we're not going to have Gary and anybody like that with us. So if you want to jump in, you got a link. I don't know if RL's still out there, but he's got a link too. If he wants to, I know he's probably getting ready for bed or something. It doesn't hurt to find out. But anyway, yeah, like we were talking beforehand, that's basically their version of the Smith & Wesson K-frame. So yeah, it's going to be your more medium size, whereas mine, like we were talking, is the N frame, which is the larger size, heavier, beefier frame and whatnot. Let me get that out real quick. And on a side note, remember how I was saying I ordered the wooden grips for my 627? I got to send them back. They sent me the wrong ones. They sent me ones for a K frame, not an N frame. Hey, Pickle, how you doing?
Not too bad. I appreciate the link. I didn't even think to look for one.
Yeah.
So that's for seeing from what little I caught of that revolver there. Kingpin. It looks pretty nice.
Yeah, I like it a lot. The guy who I bought it from, I end up finding like I know the person that he bought it from as well, and everybody that's had it before me took excellent care of it and didn't fire it very much. And knowing from the first owner to the second owner to me, makes me feel comfortable about how it was treated as well.
Right, that makes sense.
Yeah. And here's my 627. You can see it's a little bit beefier than what yours is. And then it's also a little bit dirtier than yours. For the record, guys, Fiocchi range ammo is dirty as hell. This is all from the Fiocchi. See the front of that cylinder?
Oh wow.
That's from the Fiocchi. The Remington 38s, this was still clean.
How many
Right?
Fiocchis?
That's 2 cylinders worth, or 16,
Sure.
or so 16 rounds. That stuff is filthy. I gotta get this cleaned up. But yeah, and like I was saying, they sent me the wrong grips. I ordered wood grips for it. I get them out and put them on here, and they don't fit right. Then we get to looking. Their grips for a K frame, not an N frame.
Yeah, but I mean, the process of that is just like sending anything else back, right? Like you don't have to
Yeah.
go through any kind of like paperwork to send it back and ship it in the mail.
No, I just gotta send it back, get a hold of them and send it back to them. But still,
End
they
frame.
would
That's
think
a
to get a
Smith,
K
right?
frame and N frame, huh?
That's
Yeah,
a Smith, right?
this is Smith, and I ordered the grips directly from Smith. They're Smith and Wesson grips that I ordered, and they sent the wrong ones.
Well, that's right. I'm not saying that. That's for because I'm not real familiar with the frame size. That's for. I want to say N is their big one, right? That's like their 500 Smiths and whatnot.
No, the end frame is the 627, the 629. The 500 is the I believe the X frame. That's what they call that one. This is
Oh, okay.
this is just is a little bit smaller than those ones, but it's big enough to where again you could put 8 357 Magnum rounds in here.
Right, right.
I like the conversation that we were having last week about getting the rifle to match. You know, get the 357 Henry
Right?
lever action.
We have the lever gun. Yeah, it was. I had a choice. It was either the lever gun or the shotgun. I went with the shotgun because it's a non-NFA legal 14-inch short barrel shotgun. That's not a shotgun because it's a firearm. And if anybody hasn't seen it yet, check the channel when we're done with the show. I do have a video of me shooting this. and the results to the target using number 4 shot through it. And I wouldn't want to be on the opposite end of it. Let's just put it that way.
Oh, I'm sure. That's where for talking about having a revolver and matching PCC lever action. Is that if is 357 kind of the best way to go on that?
Well, you can do 357 or 44 Magnum or 45 long Colt. They make revolvers and lever guns in those 3 calibers. And with the 38, with the 357 and the 44, if you don't want to fire full on Magnum runs, the 357 ones will both fire 38, and the 44 will both fire 44 special. Whereas with the 45 long Colt or 45 Colt, you're stuck with just that cartridge.
For a target gun, that makes total sense, but I'd want to try to use it as for short range, hunting rifle as well. Which one would be best for that?
All 3. You can take a deal with all 3 of those rounds.
Okay. Because I have no experience with a 44. I have no experience with a 45, and I've only ever put 38s through a 357 revolver.
What are the rules for handgun, carrying your handgun with you when you go hunting in California?
I have to double check those. I've heard if you were hunting on federal land, which is what a lot of private land, or public land is out here, that supposedly it's legal. I haven't had a chance to go hunting since I was told that, so I hadn't looked it up yet. But generally speaking, if you're on California controlled land, it's illegal to open carry a firearm of any kind, and they make it very difficult to conceal carry.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking because, Maryland's pretty much the same way. And you hear a lot of people talking about taking a handgun with them when they go hunting. And I was just curious as to how that would work in a state like ours that, don't believe in freedom and stuff.
Yeah, that's really I suggest you look it up for your state, just like I gotta do for mine. But from what I have been told, if you're on federal land, rules are a little different.
All right. And getting back to the calibers, the only thing I wouldn't do is hunt deer with the 38 special, but the 357 Magnum, 45 Colt, 44 special, and 44 Magnum you can take down just about any size deer in North America with any one of those rounds. It's been done for ages with the 45 Colt.
Yeah, that's where the 45 Colt rifle, I'd say probably 50 yards, maybe 60 yards. I wouldn't know if I'd feel comfortable much beyond that.
Or you can take that at 100 yards easy. With the rifle barrel, you're going to get more momentum out of it, more velocity, so you're going to be able to shoot it at a longer range than you would with the handgun.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely something I want to try. I think that'd be kind of fun.
What do people rifle hunt out of deer stands, or is that just for bow and arrow guys? Or
You can rifle hunt out of a deer stand.
It really depends on and we had this chat here, I think it was this last week on 2A Tuesday. I think it really depends on what kind of terrain you're hunting, and stands work great if you're in an area that has more like either it's overgrown or whatever the case, so that you have more defined game trails, so that you can set up somewhere where the animals have to pass through within a certain distance.
Right.
Versus
The East Coast
you're
is.
hunting. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, go ahead, Pickle.
Okay, that's versus if you're hunting more open territory, like so much of it is out west here, where there is no defined trails, they can walk almost anywhere they want. Then it's very difficult to set up, in one location and have much of a chance of seeing anything.
Yeah, and what he was saying was for here a deer stand, you put out your range, you put out your what do they call them? The little cameras, those names I can't
trail
remember.
cam.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
trail cams, game cams, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I was a complete blank, having a complete and total brain fart there. But you set those up, you see which way your game's going to go. Then you set your tree stand up, so that you're along where those trails are that you picked up on your camera. That's what a lot of people use those cameras for here. And you're able to, then you can sit there and wait for them to come walking by and then pick them off.
But be careful about those. Look up your local laws. That's where I've heard some of these states are changing their laws on game cams. Either you can't have it up, with X amount of time before season, or some of them allow you to use them, but that's for not the kind that will broadcast a photo to your phone or whatnot. So just there's laws in conjunction with game cams as well. So make sure you know your local laws.
Yeah, Maryland, you might have an issue if you're hunting West Virginia. You wouldn't have that issue because we don't have any of those kind of laws here. So yeah, like the Pickle was saying, always check your laws in your state before doing anything along those lines.
It would just seem to me, I'm not a hunter. I've never hunted before, but it would seem to me that the deer stand would be the best way to get a closer shot. So you wouldn't have to shoot as far if you're up in a deer stand because the deer is going to not see you on the ground and walk closer to you.
Yeah, have I told? I know I've told it on the show before or on somebody else's show, but if you heard the story about how I got my first deer ever?
No,
Was it with the Chevy?
No, it wasn't with a Chevy.
Okay, I have not heard it then.
Okay, me and my stepfather were out hunting, right? And we had where we were going. There were two trees that were just perfect, like natural tree stands, right? It was one of those ones where it branches out, and right in the middle of the branches is a big, like, it forms like a natural platform.
Right.
Yeah.
So he had one that was like 100 yards away where he could watch one direction, and I was up in one where I could look 100 yards like another direction. So I'm up in the tree. He's up in his tree. All of a sudden, I start hearing this scratching on the tree that I'm up in, right? I look down. There's this 8-point buck just going crazy, rubbing against the tree I'm in. I was like 20 feet up, right? So I'm like, holy hell, there's a deer scratching this tree. Yeah, I wasn't expecting that, It had to come up in the blind spot where neither one of us could see it.
Right.
And the way it was, I couldn't get my rifle aimed down and around to get to it. So I set the rifle aside, and I had this Model 66 my grandfather had bought me. That's another 357 Magnum pistol, ironically enough, since we were just talking about 357s. So I carefully pull that pistol, cock that hammer back ever so slowly so it doesn't make a really loud click and scare the deer. As much noise as this deer was making, I don't know if we would have heard it anyway. And I was able to carefully aim down at this thing, pull the trigger right down through the back of its neck, through its spine, and it just dropped right there. And that's how I got my first deer ever.
And I'm sure because your uncle, I'm sure, was expecting to hear a rifle shot. So when he heard a pistol shot, I'm sure that surprised him.
Yeah, this is my stepfather. Yeah, he was like, "What the hell are you shooting with the revolver?" All I did was pointed to the bottom of the tree. He looks and he's like, "Holy shit!" Because he wasn't expecting the deer to be right there either,
Right. Oh yeah, that's for at the right distance with the right placement. It's a lot. I hear people talk about where I've gotten on the forums and whatnot. All right, well, just looking up different things and people, you have to have a 30-06 to take a deer, then a 300 Win Mag to take an elk, and it's like these things aren't armor plated. If you put the round where it's supposed to go, you can take them with surprisingly small calibers.
Right. And a lot of people have hunted with revolvers. A lot of people don't realize this. The 357 Magnum revolver and the 44 Magnum revolver were both made for the express purpose of hunting game with them. That's what they were designed for, the cartridges.
Oh yeah.
How long? How long is the? I can't think of the term for it right now. The coned neck cylinder instead of a straight wall cylinder cartridge. I can't think of the word for it now. Like your 223 round, how it's got
A
the
neck down cartridge.
Oh, it's a
yeah,
neck
that's it.
down.
Yeah, that's it. Uh, has that been a part of firearms since pretty much the beginning, or is that a relatively new thing?
It's
They,
relatively new. 30-30s were necked, but like the old 45-70s were straight wall, and anything, as I understand it, pretty much almost everything before the 45-70s were straight wall as well.
yeah, but in grand scheme of things, there really isn't a long period between the self-contained cartridge and then the neck down cartridge. There really, really isn't. Because if you figure firearms have been around for quite a few centuries now, and there's only like maybe 40 to 50 years between the advent of straight walled and neck down cartridges, if that. So it really isn't that big of a gap between them. So we've had neck down cartridges for well over 100 years now.
That's true, because that's where right around the time of the Civil Wars when the first self-contained cartridges that were successful were really kind of created.
Right, because the Henry was the first successful rifle to use self-contained cartridges in a
Right.
repeat firearm. So. And they were used in
repeat, but that's where even the Smith and Wesson, was it a 22 caliber revolver or something that used them, didn't predate the Henrys by much, if I remember correctly.
You're talking about the volcanic? That was actually a lever action.
No, not the volcanic, but that's where it was like a not Dan Wesson, but it was actually before Smith and Wesson, joined forces. They actually, sorry?
Was it Charles Weston? I'm trying to
It
remember.
might have been.
He was the Weston in Smith and Wesson. Yeah.
Yeah, that's for who it was. His first, I think, it was a revolver design that was just his before he, had joined forces with Smith. It was a cartridge revolver, but it was like a 22 caliber or something like that, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, all the original self-contained cartridges were rimfires. You didn't get Centerfire until later, around the time that Peacemaker and whatnot came up. Prior to that, they were all rimfires.
Yeah, that's for because a rimfire was created because they tried to use pinfire at first, and it was horrible. Yeah, on the reliability.
Yeah, then it was easy for them to make the rimfire because they just upscaled the machinery that they were using to make the caps for the cap and ball revolvers, and then just put a little bit more powder and seat the ball right in that basically cap for the cap and ball revolver. Or
right. And that's why they all started out as small caliber guns because they hadn't figured out how to make a strong enough case to handle higher pressure yet.
Now they weren't all small caliber. I mean, technically, they weren't the rifle calibers like we have now. Before for the time, you had 44, 45 caliber firearms that were rimfire.
That's true. No, I forgot about that.
Yeah, like the Henry being a perfect example.
Yeah, that's true. What the original Henry was 4440 or something like that.
I don't remember. It was 44 Henry or something along those lines.
Okay.
But they were rimfire. The ones that were used during the Civil War and whatnot. Right. Those were rimfire cartridges. And what I was getting to was a lot of people don't know this, but the lever action rifle was actually based on a lever action pistol.
Right, that's true, because the original Volcanic was a pistol, wasn't it not?
Yeah, the Volcanic was a pistol. Henry, basically, he was working with Smith and Wesson at the time, and he took their Volcanic design and upscaled that to a rifle, and that became the Henry rifle.
That's right. That's right. You know, beautiful guns. That's for the. Although I do like, I think it was after Winchester forced Henry out, but the addition of the wooden forearm I thought was a smart addition because otherwise, after repeated fire, you'd burn your hand on the barrel.
Yeah. Well, you didn't really hold it by the barrel. You held the Henry by the magazine tube. It's just that the magazine tube was so small that there was the chance that you could hit the barrel with like your thumb or the tips of your fingers on the other side. So that's
Right.
where,
Especially in a combat scenario when you're not on a range, that's fine because you can take your time. But in a combat scenario, you don't always have that time.
right. And then another thing that Winchester did to refine the design even more was put the Kingsgate on it, which was a big improvement. Made
Oh yeah,
reloading so much faster.
that's one reason why I like the look of the Henry rifles, but I'd never buy one because I have a 22 that I have to load from the tube end of the muzzle, but that's
Mhm.
for any other firearm I get. I want it to be, I don't want to have to load it from that end.
Well, the way I look at it, nowadays it doesn't matter as much as it did in the West because how many people are going to be using a Henry lever gun as their home defense weapon? So you're not going to be having to do as fast of reloads with it, and the Henrys are going to be better quality than what a Winchester or a Marlin made today would be.
This is true. That's where does Henry offer a steel receiver? Because most of the ones I see that come out of
Yeah,
Henry are the brass receivers.
yeah, they make steel and brass receivers.
Okay, I guess it's just not what they're not the big ones they're known for.
Well, every one of the calibers they make is available in either I think it's in either a blued or I believe they started offering case hardened steel receivers or the brass receiver. The thing is, their brass receivers are so thick; they're just as strong as the steel ones.
Now, I've always liked the look of the color case hardened.
And they make all kinds of different calibers now too. They have 30-30, 44-70, 357, 44, 22. Any year 22s, they make a rifle that'll fire. They have their version of the AR-7 survival rifle. They have single shot bolt action rifles for adults and for kids for competition use. I mean, Henry's got a big lineup now, and they keep bringing out more and more every so many years.
That's where I've played with one of these survival rifles before, but it was an old one, and that's where something I noticed on it on the back of the barrel. They didn't have a feed ramp cut into it. It was just a blunt end and the rifle was unreliable as all heck because the rounds would come out of the magazine, and more often than not, the soft lead nose of the 22 rimfire would just get stuffed into the back of that barrel and jam.
Yeah, the Henry ones are really nice. I want to get one, to be honest. I've played with them before, and I saw a demonstration. Right, the guy took it apart, stuffed it all in the butt of the thing because that's how you store it,
Right.
and threw it in an aquarium, and it just sat there floating along the top of the aquarium.
That's cool. That's where I had played around with actually it belongs to a buddy's dad, and his the dad just sure he's we were asking him about it. He's like he just handed it to us like yeah, go play around with it for a little while because we were early 20s and we had been raised around him, so he knew that we were safe around him, so that wasn't an issue. But that's where so we played around with it, a couple magazines worth, but it was just being unreliable as all heck for us. And it was like a month later, I was watching one of the old James Bond films. It was actually one of the Sean Connery films, and they actually had one of those with
Yeah,
what they claimed to be a scope, and they were calling it a sniper rifle. It was hilarious.
yeah. Well, didn't he use that to shoot down a helicopter or something in one movie?
Well, I don't know if they use, the one I was watching, they used it to make what was probably about a 200-yard shot through a window to take out somebody.
Yeah. I thought one of the movies he had one, and he used it to shoot down a helicopter or something too. I mean, but then
Well, I'm
again,
not saying he
James
didn't.
Bond will shoot down a helicopter with a PPK. So
Yeah, that's right. I'm not saying he didn't. I'm just saying that was just not the one I was watching.
but the AR-7s definitely appeared in James Bond films, particularly during the Sean Connery era. So, yeah.
What about, and this may be blasphemous to some gun people, and I don't know that they exist, so if they do, then I'm just an idiot. But what about like Henry making an AR platform rifle or like a striker fire pistol? Do they do that, or do you think that they would
No,
ever do something like that for like an anniversary or something?
and they don't do those. The closest that they have to the AR-15 is the AR-7, which the AR-7 was the survival rifle that was developed for the U.S. Air Force. For pilots were down, they would have something, at least have a 22 that they could use to try and sort of, get out from behind enemy lines with. If they had to, they could use it to maybe shoot somebody and take on the enemy side and take their weapon, or if they had to shoot like a rabbit to survive or something like that. But
Now, the AR-7, I think, was from like the 50s or something, wasn't it?
yeah, this came about in the 50s, around the same time as the jet age.
That was like a
Right.
big deal to get the pilots armed for when they have to bail out, wasn't it? Like
Well,
I remember seeing something about that.
pilots had always been arming themselves, but usually it was with a handgun. This was the
Yeah,
first time that they came up with something that would be a rifle, even if though it was only a 22, but it was a rifle, which even a 22 rifle was going to give you a little more stability for firing because you would, you're holding it with both hands and in the way that you would a rifle. So
And not to say Henry never will produce something AR style, at least at this point,
I don't think they will
their
because
bread and butter. Oh, their bread and butter is you know, uh, the classic Western style firearms. You
right,
know,
and
so
yeah, I think that's just what they're going to stick with. Other
that's
than
what
maybe
I'm
the
guessing too.
fiction
But
lines. I just don't see them bringing out an AR-15, especially with the saturated market is what there is for the AR-15. They would just be another AR-15 among AR-15s at that point.
right
That's
now, that's where if they were to do some kind of really nice, like talk about the saturated market, because they do so much of the pistol caliber carbines. I mean, they could do something like that, where it's a dedicated PCC, AR or something, and that could make them a little different. But yeah, again, I don't see them doing that as a standard.
yeah. The problem with that would be that it's harder to get your rimmed handgun calibers, 38, 357, 45 Colt, 44 Special, 44 Magnum to feed reliably from a magazine. That's
Right.
one of the reasons why you don't see PCCs or pistol caliber carbines done in the AR platform in the rimmed cartridges because that's why they're all like 9mm, 40 Smith and Wesson, 45 Colt. Now you got, 45 ACP, excuse me,
Yeah,
and
that's where.
now 10mm because they're not rimmed cartridges, and they're easier to make feed through a box magazine.
Well, the rounds were designed to feed through a box magazine, so they're reliable versus trying to take something that's not. Kind of
Right.
like the company that was it Shot Show this year. That it's
The 4570
supposedly it's a
AR.
4570 equivalent or whatever. That's where they had to
Yeah.
have
Well, the
the rim
4570, but
milled down and a bunch of other stuff.
technically it is a 4570. It just uses a proprietary case that doesn't have the rim on it.
Right, which would make an ammo is extreme. What I don't know if there's anyone even making ammo on it. To make it yourself, you'd have to machine your own cases, a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah, you would
To
have
me, it
to
came across as more
mill
of a
the rim
gimmick.
down and potentially damage the case in the process.
Yeah.
So what does an argument like is Centerfire or Rimfire better look like? Or what does the
Center
argument
fire is more
is
reliable. Center fire is much more reliable than rim fire. and it's safer.
Now that right there, I can totally understand, like the science behind all that. And then what about the argument of what's better, a straight wall cartridge or a neck down cartridge? Because they're pretty much two different applications, aren't they?
Well, no,
Straight wall, as I understand it, tend to be a slightly higher pressure due to that bottleneck. Because anytime you take a gas and you force it through a smaller opening than what the container originally is in, the pressure increases, allowing for and then in a gun that's allowing for taking for the same amount of powder, you can get higher pressures, higher velocities.
right.
Which one's better? I don't know if there really is better. It's just it's what your application is.
And to be quite honest, they've all both straight wall and neck down cartridges have been used for the same application since both rounds came about. 4570 was a hunting and military round. 30-06 was a hunting and military round. So I mean, there's no difference in the applications for them. It's just who's doing it.
Oh yeah, and that's where I think you guys already mentioned the reliability difference between the rim and the Centerfire. From what I can tell, because Aussie 22 long rifle is the most, or 22 rifle, 22 short, whatever. They're the most common rimmed cartridges, but because in order for them to work, the casing edge on the edge of the rim has to be extremely thin, and because of that, they're very susceptible to mishandling if they're dropped or handled rough. So that's what makes them unreliable, because you can actually damage the primer in the case in transit versus versus a Centerfire. It's a thicker casing, and the primer being either flush or slightly recessed into the case and surrounded by a stronger material makes it so it's less susceptible to be damaged in shipment. So that's kind of how I see those two.
All right. Well, here's a question for you guys. A Centerfire. I've had a few, where it's got a really nice dent right in the center of the primer, but the round didn't go off. So I take it and I put it in the misfire rounds at my range. I know some people that when they have rimfire, if they misfire, they'll just reload it and try to shoot it again. Would you guys, if you had your 22 long rifle out, rimfire, and you plugged one round and it didn't go off, would you put it back in and try it again?
In theory, with a rimfire, you can do that because of the way the rim of the cartridge is where your primer is. It may have just unsettled, or the spot that was struck by the firing pin wasn't active anymore. So if you know that it's not going to go off, somewhat, it's just a bad rim. You could, in theory, try to fire it again. I don't know if I would, but in theory, you could do that with one.
I have and I do. That's where, because most of the shooting I do is not on a public range. It's either my dad's ranch or a buddy's farm or this kind of stuff. So like, okay, I get click, sit there for a few seconds to see if it's a hang fire, and then I jack the bolt. The round kicks out, and then I leave it there for a few minutes while I finish off other rounds or whatnot. And then if it hasn't gone off, then I'll go over and pick it up and try reloading it. I do the same thing with Centerfire. Because I'm not on a public range, if I have a maybe live, maybe not round sitting on the ground, I can step a few feet away from it and continue plinking for a few minutes, while I wait to make sure it's not going to have an issue.
Right. And with a Centerfire, sometimes the reason why you'll get that with a Centerfire is because it has what's called a hard primer. And sometimes if you do it, if you have semi-auto that's double action, single action hammer fired, you can double hold that trigger, and then in the second trigger strike, you may have that round go off, and it's all because it had a hard primer. You get this a lot with ammunition coming from Eastern Europe, because they make their primers are a little bit firmer made than what primers that are made here are. So you'll get that a lot. You'll see that with their round, their ammo, particularly like with the steel case stuff like Tula and Wolf and anything comes out of Brunel factory, and PPU will have that happen from time to time as well. So that's something to keep in mind with those too.
Right. That's why I've been told that if you're gonna build an AR to fire the 7.62 by 39, you can it's a good idea to do the enhanced springs and enhanced firing pins because it's a little stiffer spring and a firing pin made to handle it, so that way you get a little harder hit to the primer, so it helps reduce the issue of hard primers.
Yeah, that definitely would be helpful with those. You got to remember, again, we're talking rounds that come out of Eastern Europe, and particularly surplus or stuff that's made for like the AKs, SKS and stuff like that, where whose firing pins and stuff were made different than what you would see here. So.
Does that answer your questions, though, David?
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. Have you guys had more success or less success buying bulk ammo? Like, the 1,000 round deals you can find on the internet, whether it's Sportsman's Guide or whatever, or just going to, Walmart or whatever and buying rounds by the box.
For what kind of calibers?
Well, I just say you're 5.56 or something like that. The reason I mention it is I buy most of my ammunition from the local Walmart, and I've had maybe 10 misfires where the round didn't go off. One of my friends at the range had brought one of those bulk boxes with him that he just got shipped in from the internet, and he had a good 30 or 40 throughout the day. And he didn't fire all 1,000 rounds, but he just kept every 30, 40 rounds he'd have a misfire. And I was just wondering if buying that bulk ammo, you're going to have a lot more junk, or if maybe he just got a bad batch.
Do you know what brand ammo it was that he was using?
I don't remember. This was last summer that it happened.
Do you remember the caliber?
It was 5.56, 62 grain.
Yeah, that or may have been Brennan primed or something, but that's where being it. I've never had the finances to buy a lot of the bulk ammo, so I usually just buy a couple boxes at a time here locally, and then the laws changed here this year so that we're not allowed to order ammo online anymore. But that's where I've never had a 223 up until recently, and that's a bolt action. And I don't have any 7.62 by 39, so I've never bought the online 1,000 brick or whatever. But I have done the 500 count 22 rimfire rounds, and I mean, yeah, those bulk boxes of the 22 rimfires often will have slightly more issues, just because of the design of the round, versus if you're buying them the little 50 count box at a time.
Yeah, I thought you guys could buy online, but you had to have it shipped to an FFL. Or did they change that now again?
Well, that's what I thought too, but that's for here a couple weeks ago. I won. When Clover was talking to Allegiance Ammo, I was one of the people that won a contest, and I contacted one of the local FFLs around here that I would, was going to use because I was going to trying to get a firearm shipped in from Classic. End up not winning that auction, but then I was talking to the guy about the ammo, and he was, he informed me that you were not allowed to have ammo shipped into California anymore.
I swear.
Yeah, there's plenty of websites that I go to, and if it doesn't say right on the website, when you type in your address and it comes up Maryland, you get flagged, and it say right away no shipping to Maryland. Or if you call customer service, that's what I always recommend for people who live in states with laws like mine, is call customer service directly and just ask them straight up before you go through 5 or 10 minutes worth of ordering something off the internet, because a lot of stuff, whether it says it ships to your state or not, because frequently I look on the internet and it doesn't say will not ship to Maryland, but when you call and talk to people, they say, no, we're not sending it there.
Yeah. Yeah, I really feel bad for both of you guys who both live in those states where Nope, you can't have this, can't have that, can't have this, can't have that.
What state are you in, Rich?
West Virginia, I can have whatever I want.
Yeah, that's where you're in one of the free states.
Oh,
Yeah.
Trust me.
I went to West Virginia last weekend to see my friend I was telling you about, Rich.
Mm-hmm.
And when I crossed the state line into West Virginia, I stopped at a Chick-fil-A or something like that because I had a couple minutes to kill. And
Mm-hmm.
I considered putting my gun in my pocket, like open carrying while I was there, but I chickened out. I
Was that
didn't have,
was that the Chick-fil-A in Martinsburg?
yeah,
By the mall there?
yeah, right.
Yeah, they got good some good sandwiches there. I've eaten there before when having to go to the VA hospital.
Yeah, I chickened out. I didn't have the guts to do it, so I kept them locked in the trunk.
All you need is an ID saying you're 21 or older, man. That's all you need.
Yeah, when I got to my friend's house, I told him the same story, and they ragged on me too. They all had guns on their hips. They were like, "We open carry all the time because we live in a free state."
I'm sitting here in my living room talking to you right now with the gun on my hip.
Well, see, now that's fine. I can carry the gun inside my house as much as I want, but if I walk out on my front porch, I've just committed a crime.
Yeah,
Yeah, same here.
yeah.
Like I
That's the only
literally
reason
I can't go to my mailbox with a gun on me because not that I need to, but if I just happen to want to,
Hey, you
I
never
can't.
know when you're going to need it. To be perfect. People have been
Well,
robbed in their front step. I mean, you never know.
Oh yeah, that's where I would, if I didn't have, work and family in this state, I would so love to get out of this state, especially with, some of the laws that were just passed on the election. Our taxes are getting ready to go up again.
No surprise, honestly. There's
Oh
no.
yeah, that's where, because just what last year the voters approved a couple big bonds that the taxes were going up to pay for them, and then on this year there was like four more. Two of them were for this basically the same thing that they passed last year. They just wanted more money, and all four bonds got passed again.
What part of California are you in?
Sacramento.
Uh, so you're between the two fire zones, right?
Yeah, that's where I'm like 2 hours south of the closest one.
Yeah, that's crazy. There, you got North and South California just on fire right now.
Well, that's where between the drought that we had there for a couple of years, and we had the one good rain year. So basically, we had a bunch of weakened trees and everything else. And then we had one good year, so a bunch of stuff, the low vegetation grew like crazy, and then went dry again on us. So
Yeah.
you combine that with, the wind that we were having, when all three of those fires got started last week. It was like what? Wind was like in the high teens, low 20s, with gusts into the low 30s when those fires got started. So they just, they were off to the races.
Yeah. And they don't clear the brush or anything. Somebody reading something, I forget where, but they were talking about how they don't clear the brush properly, and that doesn't help matters either.
Well, that's where a lot of places in like Southern California you hear about these houses that got burned down, and you see the pictures before, where it has the heavy brush coming right up to the houses.
Mm-hmm.
There's in so many of those, canyons that, oh, this is environmentally protected area. This bush is growing. It's on the other side of your property. It's not on your property, but it's growing and hanging over your property against your house. If you cut it, the eco freeze can sue you for it. So.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It really is, because that makes the fire threat worse.
Oh, exactly.
It's like ridiculous. I mean, it's just kindling. It's like how you use kindling to make a campfire. That's exactly what they're allowing to have happen with these forest fires. They're not cutting away any of that underbrush that gets old and dries out. That's just kindling for that fire to just take off even more.
Oh yeah, that's where firefighters call it ladder fuel. because even the brush is hard to ignite without a significant heat source, but down power lines and that kind of stuff is almost hot enough to cause plasma. So of course it'll ignite just about anything.
Yeah.
But that's where you'll get some of these fires that'll start from like a cigarette butt, because
Mhm.
it'll hit the grass will catch, but that generates just enough heat that it'll catch the small bushes, which will catch the bigger bushes, which will catch the tree. So it has to go up the ladder.
And then, or you'll get on people that don't put their fires out properly, and it's still smoldering, and they think it's out when it's not.
I've seen that before.
Yeah,
That's when my family camped a lot growing up. There was more than once, like we'd come in on a Sunday because it was easier to get reservations, like Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night, and we'd come in on Sunday and we'd see there'd be 4 or 5 camp sites with smoldering fire pits. My dad and I would go around and put them out.
yeah. You get a fire where you think it's out all the way, but it's not, and it's sitting there smoldering. All it takes is a good breeze to come through and blow those hot coals into that brush, and
Oh yeah,
it's going to ignite it.
I know that's where because my dad has a camp trailer. It doesn't, it has a sink in it, but doesn't have a bathroom. So he has gray water, but no black. So that's where it's not legal to have the water pour out of the drain onto the ground, but it can go into a tank, and then you can just dump the tank out, which is perfectly legal. Well, it's got a 10-gallon drain tank. More than once, when we're done at the end of end of our camp trip, we'll have 8, 9 gallons of water from the weekend of gray water. We dump all 9 gallons in the fire ring.
Yeah. Yeah. Some people, they think they just stamp it out with a shovel or something that's going to put it all out. It's not going to.
No.
I don't know how many times I've seen that where they don't get like a bucket of water from like this local stream or river or lake, wherever they're at, and just dump it on the fire pit. They think just taking like a little camp shovel and smacking it and breaking it up is going to put out those hot coals in it.
Oh yeah. I know that's where Budget was out camping this weekend. He went live on, at one point, and that's when I didn't, feel bad talking about him without him being here, for me to address him directly. But I know that's where there was they had the campfire ring, but it was a pretty short one. And then I was looking around, there was probably 3 inches of leaves right up to the fire ring, all the way around, as far as the eye could see. It's like, you should at least clear out a little bit around that fire ring and nothing else.
Yeah, but here's the thing too. You probably didn't think about doing that because it's probably soaking wet. We've been getting nothing but rain in the Northeast. I don't know if he would even be able to start a forest fire if he tried right now. To be perfectly honest with you.
Okay. Well, that's right. I guess, I didn't think about the moisture content, but I was just looking at that. I was like, man, that's right. I was always taught to, if you have, use your foot or something, you drag that stuff away, and that way you have just bare dirt for the
Right.
first several feet after the ring.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. He probably didn't even. At this point, he was probably like, "I'm not even going to bother because these leaves are so damn wet anyway."
Which, if that's the case, then that makes sense. But like I said, I feel bad addressing it without him here, to be able to explain.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Devil's advocate.
No, that makes sense. I appreciate you educating me.
Yeah, I mean, it's all we've been getting. I don't. I don't know if it's as bad in the Baltimore area where David is, but here we haven't had a week without rain since April.
Oh, it's been dreadful, man. If we get even half as much snow as we've got rain, we're in trouble.
Oh yeah, we're gonna have 5 feet of snow, and it's not hyperbole. That's how much rain we've been getting. We're gonna have 5 feet of snow by the end of December at this rate.
Well, remember it was what 2 or 3 years ago we got like 10 feet of snow because the first snowstorm we got dropped 4 feet.
I'm talking one snowfall, David.
Oh, right, yeah, no doubt, yeah.
We're gonna have one. We're gonna have one snowfall where we're gonna have 5 feet of snow on the ground. You're not
Yeah,
gonna be able to get out your front door.
Yeah, we haven't received rain here since about March.
About the time we started raining, you stopped. Is that what you're saying?
Pretty much.
But yeah, and I'm not I'm not making this up. I'm being perfectly honest. That's how much rain we've been getting here. The ground is still saturated. Every time it rains, we're getting flood warnings. It can be a little drizzle, and they're calling there someplace around here has a flood warning.
Oh, I'm 100%, understand. I mean, I watch, because I pay attention to weather all across the country, not just local. And you guys haven't caught a break this year.
We had a tornado touchdown probably about, I don't know, 5 or 6 miles from my parents' house last weekend. It was just a nasty, nasty storm. Now, the tornado didn't last long and it didn't hurt anybody, but it did a considerable amount of property damage.
Yeah. Did you guys see the pictures I had posted? Like, I think it was back late April, beginning of May. What happened right before we moved to the road that we had to drive back to get to the dirt road that we lived on?
No, I don't think I saw it.
It washed out a good 10-foot wide section of this road.
Yeah, I believe it.
And then there's a bridge before you get to that spot where the creek that runs underneath it's a good 10 feet below that. The water got so high that it rose up and picked up the blacktop and moved it. And you can literally see where the water picked up the blacktop off the bridge, moved it, and set it back down again.
Yeah, I believe it.
I mean,
I've seen that a few places here in in the years that we've had good weather, and yeah, where you'll see where the rivers have overtopped, and there was actually just down the road from about a quarter mile from my dad's place. I was in high school at the time. We were having a pretty wet winter, and someone's earthen dam wasn't maintained properly, and the drain couldn't keep up. It overtopped.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the water that came down that creek, it overwhelmed the 2 5-foot culverts. It couldn't, and went over top of the road, and it, boulders the size of Volkswagen Bugs, got pushed probably 50, 60 yards downstream.
Right. Yeah. So the main highway or the main road through the town that we lived outside of, there's a pond there, and between that pond and all the rain that was coming down off the hills, it turned that main road. It looked like it was a river and not a road.
Yeah, I've seen some of the pictures of some of the stuff that they get. Some of what you guys get back east, and it's, especially because some of those areas are, West Virginia. I don't see too many of the photos, but some of the lowlands of like the Carolinas I've seen, and then, God, it was back probably 2010, or something. But that's where I think it was Vermont that got the really bad floods, and where they had the old covered bridges that had been picked up off their foundations and set back down a quarter mile downstream, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, you guys saw the Ellicott City floods.
Yeah. The town that we lived outside of is on the Potomac River. Now, the Potomac River forms just about the entire border between Maryland and West Virginia. And, I mean, there's like 2 spots, I think, on the border between West Virginia and Maryland that aren't the Potomac River, right?
Right.
So on the Maryland side, you go upriver, and there's the city of Cumberland, and their flood control system, if they release their floodgates, it all comes down to Potomac. Thank God they didn't open those floodgates when they were having that flooding in town. That would have been a disaster.
Oh my goodness. It would have absolutely destroyed that entire roadway down there.
Oh yeah, that's where having rivers as boundaries between states is really common because it's an easily defined area. But yeah, I mean, that's where I've seen what happens when either a levee breaks or dam breaks or someone opens a floodgate at the wrong time, and rather than it be a slow gradual rise, you've got a 15-foot wall of water coming down a canyon all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm.
When you're coming along, the roadway that I take from my house into Martinsburg, I think it's 340, and the roadway runs, like Rich was saying, right along the river the entire way, and it's only about what do you think, Rich? Maybe like 10 feet from the water level, to the road.
On 340, we usually take when we go that way, we usually hit 68, I-68 to I-70. So
Yeah, see, I come up 70 and then take 340 because 340 is closer to me than going all the way up that way
yeah, well,
on
we would
7.
do, yeah, because we're going the opposite direction. We would take 68 to 70 to 81. You know, so
You guys are rattling off all these road names. I'm like, okay, well that's an even number. That's a east-west road.
yeah, yeah, that's about how it works with the interstates. Even numbers go east to west, and odd numbers go north to south. And
No, that,
the higher numbers are all on the East Coast, and the single digits are all out on the West Coast.
that was actually during the 50s with the uh, Interstate, Commerce and Defense Act. That was, a standard that they laid out, so that way it was easy to determine where something was. Because
Right.
all odds run north-south with low numbers on the west. That's why Highway 1 is our coastal highway, and then it goes higher as you go east. And then the low numbers, for your east-west roads are evens, and the low numbers are on the southern border.
You want to take a guess what the name of the interstate or the number on the interstate that connects Pittsburgh and Philadelphia?
What's that?
76. Think about why.
Oh, yeah.
1776.
Yep, and it's the PA Turnpike. It runs between Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, and it's Interstate 76.
That's fitting. Yeah, that's where by trade, I'm a roadway engineer. So that's where I learned a lot of that kind of stuff just in course of doing what I do. But yeah, that's where I always you hear people talk about, oh, we're building this flood proof or we're building this tornado proof or whatever. Like,
They know such.
you're extremely arrogant if you think you can build something to withstand Mother Nature. If she decides to tear it down, it is gone.
Well, I mean,
Like,
water
go ahead, David.
water is what most of our planet is made of. And in my opinion, there's no more powerful force in nature than water.
Yeah, and there's a reason why the Blue Oyster Cult wrote the line. History shows again and again how nature points out the folly of men.
Oh yeah. That's true. Water in small quantities can be a lifesaver. In large quantities, it can be a life taker.
Yeah, this is just like fire. I mean, fire and water, they can both be a tool or a detriment.
Oh yeah. But, oh, what was the topic supposed to be tonight? 'Cause, we've gone down a heck of a rabbit hole at this point.
I didn't really have one. I was going to maybe talk about what's going on in Florida right now, but that was about the only thing I was really ever thinking about. But then me and David, this like the last show, got talking about his stuff, and that just became the topic. like you want to go live and talk about this stuff? Okay.
What's going on in Florida?
Oh, you don't know about the what's going on with Broward County again?
Oh, that's true. I haven't. I caught bits and pieces of it on Thursday, but I've been kind of unplugged the last couple days.
Hey, I'll give you the quick rundown.
Yeah.
Politics are shady.
And what is with Broward County, man? Jesus freaking God damn! This has got to be the most corrupt county in the country outside of New York City or Chicago. Honestly,
have you seen a picture of that woman, the Sykes woman? I don't know what her first name is, but
the female African American Phil Spector.
Yeah, she looks like a horror story, like movie star. Like she would be perfect in like a Freddy Krueger type of movie or something.
Yeah. Her, Einstein, Phil Spector, and Don King all go to the same barber.
Wow, she's scary looking.
That's right. I did hear that they were, in not just Florida, but there was a few places where, the votes are 98% counted. Oh, well, here's a box that we forgot about. That's happened in a number of places.
Yeah, well, the woman that we're talking about in Florida, she's got in trouble for this shit before.
Lovely.
And somehow she still has her job. She's literally been cited by the federal government for election violations in the past.
Well, when Trump first got elected, everybody was screaming about Russian collusion, Russian collusion. So Trump asked a bunch of states, he said, everybody turn in your voter stuff and we'll go through all this voter stuff and find out what's going on. And all the major states that were, anti-Trump all refused to turn over and cooperate.
Yeah.
So if the elections are supposed to be this, treasured, you know, precious thing that we have, why not do some investigating and find out what's going on?
And Breitbart was reporting that this woman was letting illegals vote.
Well, Barack Obama said it himself. Barack Obama said it himself that the legal immigrant, he was doing an interview. I don't know if it was a web interview or what with some girl, and she asked him about illegal immigration, and he said they can't stop you. Go vote. I didn't say that. He said that.
Yeah, that's where there's talk about San Francisco here in California, doing something similar, allowing illegals to vote, and that's
Well, they already do in Maryland, and in certain local elections, illegals can vote in Maryland.
yeah, that's to me that's anyone who's allowing allowing that kind of stuff to happen needs to be dealt with. I don't know how, but we need to deal with it.
And see, as far with this illegal immigration thing, this certain like radicals in Maryland are got their hackles up and are all crazy about it right now. But for the most part, this is something that we've been dealing with for 20 some odd years. It's just now that Trump is involved that it's a big nationwide discussion. MS-13 has been ruining our neighborhoods and harassing our people for 15 years. Illegal immigrants have been moved into our every time they cross the border and they get caught, they get shipped to Maryland and dispersed throughout Maryland.
Yeah.
Illegal immigration has been a topic here forever and ever.
Yeah, here's the best part about that too. Maryland has one of the highest numbers of illegal immigrants, and they're right next door to the state with the fewest number. We have the fewest number of illegal immigrants in West Virginia.
And that's a topic of discussion. Like the popular topic of discussion is illegal immigrants are coming to do jobs Americans don't want to do. Now, Calaveras may experience this out in California where people don't want to pick tomatoes. People don't want to pick watermelons or, whatever they're out in the field picking oranges or whatever it might be. In Maryland, we don't have that kind of stuff. We don't have apple groves and orange groves and, all that kind of stuff. Most of our farming that gets picked is machine picked. And the illegals are in the construction area. And from a guy who works construction, illegal immigrants make more money than I do. So it's not like they're over here getting $5 an hour to hang drywall. They're getting just as much as everybody else and sometimes more because they've got the crew to do it.
Yeah, that's the issue we're having over here too. Yeah, they're like, oh well, they're coming over to work in the fields, and some of them are, or some of them they'll start in the field, then give it a couple years, and they leave the fields and go do other labor, whether that be in construction or whatever else. They don't stay working in the fields because working in the fields suck.
Yeah. But one of the reasons why they don't come to West Virginia.
Well, I'd imagine the amount of work available might be one thing, but also the people actually holding them responsible for things. I'm sure is another thing, another reason.
One of the main things that decreased the number of illegal immigrants in West Virginia was they made English the official language of the state. They can't go to the welfare department or Social Security offices or anything like that in the state of West Virginia and find somebody that speaks Spanish. Everything's in English in this state.
That's one of the things that I don't understand is how the United States' official language isn't English. And please, like I understand, people who would say that Spanish is the most spoken language on earth or whatever. The most dominant language on the face of the earth is English.
Well,
Anywhere you
that's
go in the
for
world, there's going to be somebody that can speak English. There's going to be people teaching themselves how to speak English. Uh,
Yeah.
English American culture, English speaking culture is the most dominant. So why is it such a big deal to say that English is America's language?
I mean, you look at
for
like Japan and South Korea. Most schools, kids over there are taught English right alongside Korean if they're in South Korea, or Japanese in Japan. Or you go over to Europe, Norway, Denmark, the Netherlands, um,
France.
France, Sweden. They're all teaching English too.
That's
They're
for
all in,
Spanish.
they're
Spanish.
go
Sorry,
ahead.
go ahead. Spanish is the most widely spoken first language in the world, yes. But on the business, perspective, English is the most commonly spoken in the business world. So that's where whether it be trade or whatever else, yeah, that's where English is what's used in most international business. So that's why so many of these countries make sure their people know how to speak English because of that. So I mean, I agree. That's right. You go to Germany, you expect they because I know someone he was moving over there. You had 1 year of immersion classes, and then at the end of the year you had to take an exam in German. And if you couldn't pass, you were out. So I mean, the idea of having an official language for a country, and that's where if you want services from this country, you operate in their language. I mean, if I was going over to Japan, yeah, I'd have to learn Japanese. Or if I was going over to France, I'd have to learn French, this kind of stuff. To me, it makes sense.
Yeah, if you're immigrating to a country, you adapt to being in that country. You don't expect that country to adapt to you.
Exactly.
I mean, there's always, like, if you're in Japan, there's always a place where a tourist can go and you can find English. But if you're going to
Well,
move
yeah,
into
tourists, I
a
have no
traditional
problem with.
Japanese neighborhood in Okinawa somewhere, then you should learn how to speak Japanese.
Yeah, that's where, as a tourist traveling, I don't have an issue with someone traveling and not knowing the native language and kind of working their way through using whatever their native language is. But
Sure,
that's if you're moving to permanently live in a country, you should adapt to said country.
that's right.
Right. Yeah.
Ugh.
And see, that's the good thing about America is because, if you move to Afghanistan and you're a, conservative Christian, well, you better not be a conservative Christian in Afghanistan openly. But in America, you can be a conservative Christian or a Muslim or a Jew or an atheist or anything that you want to be. As long as you want to be an American while you're doing it, then you can do that.
and
You can't do that in other countries.
no, that's one of the beauties of the First Amendment.
Oh yeah, and that's for one thing about like the whole like during when we've had the mass immigrations over the over our history. The Chinese set up their own little sub communities, the Chinatowns, but then they learned to work, so within their own little neighborhood, they could keep their own language and culture. But when they ventured outside of those neighborhoods, they interacted with Americans as Americans. But then, the Italians did the same thing, and the Irish, and all these various groups. I have no issue with if you have a neighborhood that's mostly of your culture, being able to honor your own holidays and this kind of stuff within your own neighborhood, as long as you're not expecting the next neighborhood over to shut down everything they're doing, so that way you can have your celebration.
Right.
Well, that's the problem that I have with the hyphenated America
Yeah.
is, if I'm I'll just make something up, an Irish American, and then I trace my roots all the way back to the first Irish that came across the waters, and and I could go back in time and see my great ancestor and be like, "Yeah, I'm an Irish American," he would probably look at me and say, "No, you're an idiot. You're an American. I worked too hard to become an American, to be called an Irish American. Don't label me. I am an American." And I understand, you know, appreciating your heritage and all those kinds of things, but you got to think back at all the hard work. If you look at, black people had went through all the stuff that they had to do to become real, true Americans and get the respect that they deserve and the rights that they deserve. Do those people consider themselves African Americans, or do they work too hard to become Americans? You
Oh yeah.
know,
Well, that's where my grandparents on my dad's side, they're actually, a Canadian. And that's where they came over here in the late 50s, early 60s and worked their absolute asses off to make something of themselves here. Because, and before my grandfather passed away here a couple of years ago, he even said that's where if he had stayed in Canada, he never would have been able to make of himself what he was able to do here. So even though he was not born here, he was 100% committed to this country.
Yeah, I mean, an example from that of somebody that all three of us know. Look at the crazy Scotsman.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, he's working his ass off to get his citizenship.
Yeah, that's where from what some of the stories I've heard him tell, that's where he didn't have a whole lot back home. That's part of why he came here, and that's where and he's making the most of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's hoping by the end of the next year he'll have it. So,
Well, I hope so. I mean, he's worked hard enough for it.
yeah.
I tell you what, that'll be a cool live stream to watch.
Oh yeah, 'cause that the day he gets it, he's gonna be throwing a party.
Oh,
Yeah.
hell yeah.
Ugh.
He'll be at the range. Well, he works at the range. He'll definitely be at the range. He'll be firing some rounds, that's for sure. And then when he gets home, he'll be throwing back some rounds of a different variety.
Yeah, right. And that's where I if I was if I lived closer to him, I'd buy him around. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But all right, guys, I'm gonna get out of here. I need to go in and get some chow.
All right.
All right, Calaveras. Have a good day, brother.
Appreciate the link.
Yep, no problem. Probably gonna start wrapping this up anyway, since we don't got too many people jumping in. I mean, I wasn't expecting a whole lot of people to jump in because of the whole Tulsa thing and everything. Like Gary saying, he just got home, had a long day, so I didn't even send him or Snob a link because for that reason, because I didn't think either one of them were going to be up much to jumping in tonight. So
Yeah, Gary got a couple good interviews. He posted them already on his YouTube channel, and
yeah,
so if you get a
yeah,
chance, go check those out. They're pretty good.
he's been posting them up on his Patreon, on Gunstreamer, GunTube, and on YouTube. So, and I think he also posted them over on Instagram. I don't know if he's still out there. Is my right, Gary? He posted them on Instagram too. See if he responds. I'm pretty sure he did. Thought he did. But yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if he's still out there or not. But yeah, he did get some good interviews. Everybody went. There was some good. There was not as much content this time as the last time, but then there weren't as many people there. And he said, yeah, he did. He also has it up on Instagram. So there you go, folks. You want to see Gary's interviews? You can check him out on Gunstreamer, GunTube, YouTube, and Instagram. Am I forgetting any? I don't know. I can't remember. I can't remember if I'm forgetting something. I just feel like I'm forgetting something. I don't know if I am or not. But yep, check it out. If you can't, togethergary.com, I'm sure he'll have the links posted over there on his website. So And here I am. Gary, you weren't even in the chat and you're still getting plugged tonight. See how much we like you.
That's fine.
So, yeah. You got anything you want to plug now that we just plugged away everything that Gary probably would have plugged if you were on the panel?
No, not really. I always appreciate a good conversation, man. So thanks for the link.
Yeah, not a problem, man. You're welcome anytime. And with that, folks, we will say good night, and we will see you somewhere later tonight at some point, possibly. I mean, Crazy Scotsman's getting started now, I believe. Gun Gals isn't going tonight, Gunpowder said, because of the Tulsa thing, so they're not going to be on tonight. And, oh, yeah, no problem, Gary. You actually need to thank go over on Instagram and look up at Amy Page 28 and thank her. That's my wife. She actually picked out all the cards and hand signed them and hand put out the addresses and everything. So that's where you need. So you need to go over there on her on Instagram, and I don't know if she, anyway, tag, throw up a post on Instagram and tag her in it and thank her on there. I'm sure she'll get a kick out of that. Travis P11 posted on Instagram last night. I don't know if you saw it or not. And I tagged her in the thing telling him that she's the one that did it. And she's like, "Why are you sharing this with them?" I'm like, I just tagged you in the thing saying that you deserve the credit. And she got all defensive because I tagged her in the reply. It was funny. But yeah. She doesn't understand how Instagram works sometimes. But yeah. Anyway. Now that I plugged my wife's Instagram as well, I think we're going to get out of here. If you want, go over and check out Crazy Scotsman's chat in Midnight, I'm sure it'll be on later. So, I'll see you folks next week on this show. Take care, everybody.